Hello and welcome. I'm Pratap Singh. You're joining us on NewsX. In fact, we are turning our focus to our big story this hour. Residents of Delhi and those in the national capital region were woken up to strong tremors as the city was hit by an earthquake. It struck at 5:36 a.m. and the magnitude recorded on the Richter scale was 4.0. The epicenter was identified in the National Center for Seismology as Durgabai Deshmukh College of Special Education in South Delhi's Dholakua. Meanwhile, the hypocenter or the depth of the earthquake was a mere 5 kilometers. The jolt lasted for just 35 seconds. While no casualties or damages were recorded, the tremors caused panic amongst residents. Many rushed out of their homes. Several of them, in fact, said they heard a loud rumbling sound. Now, experiencing an earthquake isn't uncommon in Delhi. The city is located within seismic zone 4, which is considered prone to earthquakes due to its proximity to the Himalayan collision zone. In fact, several warnings have also been issued in recent years regarding the possibility of the capital witnessing a high-intensity earthquake. Considering that Delhi lies in a high-risk area, it's time to construct quake-proof infrastructure. Well, we've conducted, in fact, a survey to gauge the pulse of the nation and particularly the citizens of Delhi, whether they're prepared to tackle such a scenario. We've also asked the public whether they're aware of steps taken, what are the steps to be taken during an earthquake, and whether they feel the government is prepared for earthquake management in Delhi. And let's quickly take a look now at the results of course, this survey. What were the answers of the respondents to this survey? Let's quickly take you through the questions asked and then the results as well. So this, of course, was the big question asked on the Delhi earthquake and its fallout. The first big question was, did you feel the strong tremors in the morning? 75% people said yes, 25% people said no. So overwhelming, of course, majority felt the earthquake today. Also, of course, we asked respondents, what was your immediate response to the earthquake today? So 42% people actually said they rushed out of their homes. 25% people said they didn't feel the quake. 22% people said they didn't move in shock as a result of the earthquake. And 11% people said they hid under a table. The next question we asked, of course, in this survey was, are you aware of the steps that should be taken when an earthquake occurs? 87% people actually said yes, they are very much aware. 11% people said no, and 2% people said maybe. We then went on and asked the survey respondents, is the government prepared for earthquake management in Delhi? How well prepared is the establishment to tackle an earthquake and its fallout? 39% people said yes, they are. 37% said no, they aren't. So pretty close there. 13% said maybe, and 11% said that they can't say. We then went on and asked the survey respondents, should India consider constructing earthquake-proof homes? And 90% people said yes, that's something that should be done. Only 4% people said no, and 6% people said maybe. So these, of course, are the questions asked and the survey results. Let's now quickly throw it open to our guests as well. Joining us live, we have a special panel. Padma Shri Dr. Sanjeev Bagai, Chairman Nephron Clinic, is live with us. Dikshu Kukreja, architect, joins us live. Dilip Cherin, Image Guru, is also live with us. Professor C.S. Dubey, expert geologist, also joins the broadcast. Professor Dubey, let me begin with you first. Many people, of course, saying that they felt the earthquake today in Delhi, also saying they know what to do if an earthquake occurs, but not very confident in earthquake management of the government. Just 39% people saying yes, quite a few, 37% people saying no. They feel the government is not prepared to tackle an earthquake and its fallout in Delhi.
I agree with you. This has a discussion being long, that what are the preparations when you have a disaster like an earthquake, big earthquake. There were earlier earthquakes from 1720, it has been reported, then 1835 it has been reported, then 1960 and 1956 it was reported that there were earthquakes from where the epicenter was near Delhi only. So that is one thing, but if the earthquake comes from the Himalaya with an earthquake nearby, say in Garhwal or near Dehradun, if it is something like 8.5 or 9, then what will be the effect on Delhi itself? It will be something like 6.5. I think that is more concerned, and we have to be careful, and we have to have some disaster management plans. Though they make it, but there is no guidelines proper or the proper practices as in being done in Japan and other places where they have regular routine exercises for these things.
Okay, let me then take that across to Dilip Cherin as well. Dilip Cherin, first question, did you feel the earthquake today? What was your first reaction to it? And given the fact that, we live in this high seismic zone, do you believe more precautions need to be now taken by Delhiites?
I did feel the earthquake because I happened to be awake at that time. And even if I was not, the sound and the roar that actually accompanied the earthquake was enough to wake most people up unless they were really sound asleep. Second, did I do anything? I just ensured that the ability to run down the stairs to the ground floor of our own home was there in terms of leaving the doors open, because actually I was expecting an aftershock, and I was surprised. In most earthquakes, one feels the shock first and then one gets a sense of the aftershock. And I just took the precaution of making sure that I had my exit plan, but I did not do anything much more, honestly. And it was stupid of me not to have done that, I think.
Yes. Do you believe most people in Delhi, Dilip Cherin, are not aware of earthquake FAQs about what to do if an earthquake strikes? Do you believe more knowledge, dissipation is needed on this topic and aspect?
Most of us need to be educated in very simple terms, and the idea is to find something which you can duck under and hold on to and hope to hell that you survive if there's a fall. But even that basic knowledge isn't there with everybody. I knew about it. Did I implement it? I don't want to pretend I did not.
Okay, let me quickly, in fact, also bring in now Dikshu Kukreja. Dikshu Kukreja, a pretty severe earthquake, of course, this morning. The depth was shallow, which is what made the roar pretty loud, and of course the shock severe as well. Thankfully, no casualties, but many of our respondents of survey saying that they believe the government should now encourage earthquake-proof housing. Is that something that's happening actually on ground?
No, I think, of course, this is the need of the hour, and this is responsibility of any sensitive development, human-centric development that has to come up, that it has to take care and mitigate natural disasters, including earthquakes. But what is more alarming and a serious point of concern here, Uday, is that currently, the built environment that we have, first of all, we all realize that it's not earthquakes that take human lives. It's the buildings or the falling of buildings or the damage to the buildings that take human lives. And this shocking statistic is that currently the number of buildings we have in Delhi, only 3%, I repeat, are earthquake proof. The rest are not. So that is a big statistic out there which needs very immediate attention. And as you also aware, and your viewers must be knowing, that over the years, the propensity and intensity of earthquakes has compelled Delhi to be moved to a higher degree of earthquake risk zone. So we used to, many years back, be in zone 2, then became in zone 3, and now we are in zone 4. And zone 5 is the highest zone. So we are in a precarious position. We know about the Himalayan belt and what happens with the tectonic plates below the Himalayan belt. And today what happened was right literally under our feet, because it was the epicenter was Delhi and just 5 kilometers below the surface of the earth. So given these situations, I feel definitely to answer your question, not just homes, but all other built environment that we are creating has to be earthquake proof. And I would go forward to say that looking into the future, they should be designed not for the current zone 4, but our building should be designed for zone 5.
Okay, let me in fact ask you then about your reaction to the earthquake today. Did you hear it? Did you feel it? What was your first response?
I certainly did, and like my dear friend Dilip Cherin, had a similar experience that, and your survey says so. 75% people felt it, you mentioned, 87% know what to do, and then there are people like Dilip and me who know, but we don't do what we are supposed to do. So certainly there needs to be a little more sensitization that needs to come, in citizen awareness, that we actually should be able to jump into those safety precautions which we know we should be following during earthquakes. earthquakes. It's a matter of concern, but I go back to my major concern that how do we actually, and by the way, technology exists to retrofit and strengthen our current buildings, which I think is the need of the hour.
Yes. Dr. Sanjay Bagai, let me quickly bring you in here now on, of course, your first response to the earthquake today. Did you hear it? Did you feel it? What did you do immediately? And what did you make of the severity?
Good evening. I felt it very much. I felt it. I was awake. I was just about starting my reading for the morning. There was a huge rumbling noise. There was a distinct tremor. There was shaking of the building. Coming to what we can actually do and what I did was first was to secure my old mother. That's more important. So the most vulnerable are children, elderlies, and with people who are with comorbidities or people who are handicapped, either on a wheelchair or who need special assistance. Point number 2 is you must and you always must look out for switching off your gas connection at home. Most of us have IPGL gas connection. The first thing, and generally the port is a common port coming into even a duplex house or a multi-storied house. So switch off your gas connection because your next major risk is fire. Point number 3 is always mentally be prepared of an evacuation plan from your home. It becomes more difficult in a high-rise building if you're on the 4th or the 5th floor because what is paramount importance is do not use the lift. In presence of earthquakes or with the risk of after tremors, aftershocks, do not use a lift. So staircase is the best way, but in case you're in a high rise, is to duck yourself under a heavy dining table. That's the easiest thing. But the elderly, and especially people who are on a wheelchair or need special assistance, that becomes really of a challenge. But more importantly, going forward is the entire city. I'll just take a minute more of your time because this is something which is really important. Having built and constructed hospitals, I can share my experience. We are in seismic zone 4. No building plan from DDA and no permission from MCD should be given until you meet a minimum criteria of being earthquake resistance. Now, if in today's time you have a good level of construction, I'm not going to go into the details to waste time of the type of construction. Most of the buildings have, present good buildings have what we call as a MS structure, a very strong foundation of a basement with double RCC, using more of steel rather than just bricks and cement, because steel is resistant towards vibration. Can withstand an earthquake without cracks or structural damage to the building or loss of human lives up to level Richter scale 6. If it is more than that, yes, there may be a little bit of a structural damage or cracks in the wall. But to ensure that the building is made with the minimum amount of guidelines and safety, I think that is important. We must, as a community, as a Delhi citizen, including the government agencies, make sure that we must have an evacuation plan from a colony. If the colony gates are blocked, locked, and unmanned, we are sunk. We must allow access for emergency vehicles, be it ambulances or fire brigades. Remember, eventualities do not send you a WhatsApp before coming. They come and hit you and they take the floor below your feet. We must be contingency ready. We must have our back lanes cleared for emergency vehicles to come. The back lanes are locked. They are encroached upon. The payments are gone because of the encroachments. We were lucky in a sense that at that time it was 5:30 in the morning. But imagine if this happens at peak hours or 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock, school buses blocking the roads, encroachments, vendors, padiwalas. This is important as a city. We are in a high risk zone. It is always better to be prepared and be ready and have plan A and plan B rather than having been caught being totally unaware. Lastly, most importantly is when you are looking at a risk factor, either it is fire in residential homes or high rise, or it is fall of people when they try to run away, or it is more of a damage to the body in terms of parts of the building falling. So I think we need to be more ready. We need to be more aware. We need to have a more public awareness on this so that people are aware. But the government must step in now. The laws must be so watertight that anyone who builds a building which is not meeting the norms, that building should be sealed.
Okay. Let me in fact also then ask you, Dr. Bagai, about that other question that we posed to respondents as well, about how equipped the government is to tackle an earthquake, God forbid if its severity is intense, and the response and fallout of it.
I think, Uday, no government is totally prepared, neither here or in US. We have seen what's happening in California. We've seen in South Pacific Islands. We've seen classically in Japan, one of the countries which is most earthquake prone and tsunami prone. So I think depending upon the region where you are in, now if you are closer in Delhi, just focusing on Delhi, and again allow a minute. If you're focusing just on Delhi, residential areas which are closer towards the Yamuna have more salt on the soil. They are more risk as far as more at risk because of the earthquakes. If you're more far away, that means closer towards the Aravalli range. The Aravalli range is the oldest range. It's in fact even older than the Himalayas. That gives more solidity to the ground and the shaking is less. Shaking itself is of different types, different waves, different energy levels. But building norms is important. Awareness is important. Having simple protocols in your mind is important. Over to you.
Okay, let me take that across to Dilip Cherin as well. Dilip Cherin, what further precautions can citizens of Delhi take given the fact that we live in this high seismic zone? Also, of course, at the end of the day, do you believe that there needs to be encouragement for quake-proof housing by the government as well?
I think Dr. Bagai has kind of outlined the big problems, and Dikshu has given us the assurance that it is possible to retrofit at least the residential buildings to ensure that there is a quake safety zone in each home. But the real problem would actually happen if this were to happen during peak hours and anything were to happen. You would have a panic situation in a city. And I think that the government's first step is to ensure that an inspection, which is not based on bribes and corruption, goes around and tells citizens to what extent they are vulnerable, given that there is nothing that any house owner or flat owner or average citizen can do about it. But at least making them aware will make sure that the basic precautions for 97% of structures actually gets into place. It is a process. If advanced countries haven't been able to de-risk themselves, expecting us to do that is impossible given the structure of society, the levels of bribery, the extent of shakedowns, everything put together. So let's be realistic. Let's look at what can be done. Let's look at what needs to be done first and prioritize those things so that at least government can, with head high, say we have begun the work and we need to do that starting tomorrow.
What further sensitization, Professor Dubey, is needed for residents of Delhi, for citizens of Delhi, and for citizens who live in high seismic zones in the country?
Well, first of all, one should understand the total, how the what are the possibilities of earthquake in Delhi and surround region. When I being a geologist, there are sub-parallel faults being developed, parallel to the sub-parallel to the Himalayas. For example, Delhi Sargodha and the fault where this earthquake has come is Faridabad to head northwest southeast fault. Further to below this, further south, there is another fault which is sub-parallel to this fault. And there are faults which are like Delhi Hardwar, they're cross-cutting these faults. So wherever these points they come, where they are interlocked, their earthquakes are bound to come. Especially there are other places like Sonipat, Jeen, where fault earthquakes are coming. In Delhi itself, this is a very important thing. Now, if it is in the hard rocks for Himalaya Ridge area, we all know that it has no problem. But if it is in the Yamuna area where the liquefaction is much more higher, I have a paper where I have given for each and every place that where it is more vulnerable, where it will not be more, where the amplification will be more, liquefaction will be more of the waves. So that those areas are very vulnerable, and rightly said by all the people, that how you have to go is you have to understand first which are the places, and most important thing is right from the earthquake, this retrofitting area, to the places where they want to make them vacant, and how the as Dr. Cherian has said, that where people have to have places like that should be made in the houses itself now. It is time to go and make houses that prone, not only prone earthquakes, but the people prone earthquakes. They should they should be earthquake prone, means they should have the knowledge that where what they have to do immediately. Uh, Finally, I will say that it is not that people doesn't know. For example, in our societies, we have fireplaces, we have the vacate where the vacation has to go, but the only thing is that training is not there. And if we train the people, rightly, I think most of the, disaster problems, especially the deaths and the disasters, injuries will not happen. That is the most important thing. And then second thing is, like in when it happened in 2001 in Bhuj area, that communication and the infrastructure should be very strong. As rightly said, where you have to be vacated, what are the places to get vacated, that kind of training is very important. And we are still lacking behind, because there is a will, but there is not a program for that. Even disaster management assessment NDMA has not made any localized program for people like that. There were some programs when disaster happened in Bhuj area, but then they diminished slowly. What I want to say is that you have to continuously being trained. The young masses are coming. The climate change is taking place. You don't know where the earthquake can come, and the kind of, the activities going on. 1720 earthquake was a big earthquake, but at that time the urban people were less. But I remember I had read somewhere that in 1835 earthquake, the Firoza Tughlaq fort was, destroyed, and after 1803 earthquake in Himalaya, the Qutub Minar was destroyed. So it all happens not only from here, from the Himalaya as such also. So all these taken into consideration, you have earthquakes which are prone to 6 and above in Delhi region, and you have earthquakes which are areas which are prone to magnitude more than 8 or 9 in Himalayan region, which are close to Delhi. So you can see that seismicity, if you see the intensity of these seismic intensities, you can see that they at least 6 or 6.5 can be there. From the Himalayan earthquake, intensity could be there. So that has to be tackled properly, looking at the urban areas, which urban area is more prone to that.
Okay, point taken. Dishu Kukreja, what about now earthquake-proof housing and other precautions, as you were saying, that people can add to, not just newly built homes, but already built homes? How affordable is this? What role can the government play? And what can be done, of course, moving forward in this domain now, given the awareness that's building up as well?
That's a very good question, Uday, because, we can keep making all these norms and policies for new buildings, but what do we do with the entire building stock that exists already in the city? So for that, my suggestion is as follows. Number one, we know that there are so many unauthorized colonies. We have rules that in planned colonies, you can't build more than 4 floors. And, in Lal Dora areas, there is just no law of the land. You can go and build 7-storied structures. There are no safety certificates for structure that are taken. So my first suggestion would be that whatever existing buildings are there must be that the authorities take out, there should be a campaign, there should be now a policy that you have structural tests done, which are very easy to do. Today, you have that technology. You have things like NDT, CBR, etc., various tests, which without disturbing the structure can tell you the actual strength of the structure and whether it is how earthquake proof it is, if it is at all. And accordingly, then retrofitting measures are there which must be carried out. But I would have add a caveat here that all this is only possible and will be successful if there is no corruption that creeps into the system. Because, the moment I suggest certificates and tomorrow these certificates are available at a cost, then there's no point in doing something like this. But certainly, it's the need of the hour that these buildings are assessed and taken care of. Just the way we take care of a human body, when we get older, we get our health checks done and we take care of ourselves. Similarly, buildings, especially concrete buildings, have a life of 40 to 50 years, maybe a few years more depending on how it's built. So they require these checks and tests to be done. The second important thing, and similar, I would say in nature to what Dr. Bagrai mentioned, that there are so many parts of the city where, God forbid, when there is a disaster, whether it's fire or an earthquake, you won't even be able to have the emergency vehicles going in because of encroachments, because of the narrow lanes, because of open sewer lines, etc., etc. So let's fix all of that, because paramount what we need to realize as sensible Indians is that there is a cost to human life. We tend to forget that more often than not, and we don't value human life. So unless that culture comes in, that realization comes in, I think the answers are all there. And in fact, there's less science to it and more common sense. So it needs to be adapted. Our city is sitting literally on a point where, we could be headed for a major disaster. And we've been hearing these warnings coming not just because of climate change, but because of the geological movements that have been taking place over the last few years. We understand the fragility of even hill towns, our Himalayan areas like Uttarakhand, Himachal. All these areas have been built so irresponsibly in the last few decades that I think we need to take a holistic approach to what are we doing with our urban development. What are these smart cities or towns that we are building? So maybe I'm going too large in perspective, but it's time. It's time somebody looks at the big picture as well, right?
Absolutely. Last word to you, Dr. Bagai, before we wrap up. Dr. Sanjay Bagai, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I shudder to think what would happen to areas like Chandni Chowk or Old Delhi or Jamia or Lajpat Nagar, Sarojini Nagar. There is illegal tapping of electric connections. There is no bylane and there is no road at all. The bylaws are flaunted like we change our clothes. There is over construction, unauthorized construction. There is illegal encroachments, vendors, JJ clusters. There is no way at all on heaven or hell that an emergency vehicle can go. Not even an auto rickshaw can go through those lanes, leave alone an ambulance or a fire brigade. Now, if you're asking for problems, then we are sitting ducks to get it. So I think a lot needs to be done from policy. Lot needs to be done to enforce those rules and policies. Lots need to be done to make public awareness done. Just imagine in good residential areas, we have people buying one car for more than 2 to 5 crores, but they don't buy 5,000 rupees firefighting equipment at home. If that doesn't define foolishness and stupidity, I don't know what does.
All right. My thanks to all of our guests for joining us on this particular discussion.